Hey guys, what's up? My name is Sky Webb and I'm here to talk about a true crime story that I cannot get off my mind. But before I get started, I just want to put out a little disclaimer that I mean no harm to any of the victims or the victims' families, and I wish everyone who was hurt within this story the utmost peace and solace, either in rest or in recovery. With that out of the way, happy True Crime Thursday. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. Please try and stick it out, even if you have to put me on mute. I would really appreciate that. Thanks. Also, sorry for my hair. It looks, yeah, like that. Oh boy. Today we're looking into a very interesting case, the case of Elizabeth Wettlafer. I can say it in my head, not out loud, clearly. Wettlafer. Elizabeth Wettlafer. Elizabeth was born on the 10th of June 1967 and she grew up in a small town in Ontario, Canada. She grew up in a very religious home, in a Baptist home, and then she actually went on to study further religion and education in college before then finally deciding that she would study nursing. Now, Elizabeth is a prime example of why you should never judge a book by its cover, because today Elizabeth isn't the victim in the story. She is actually a serial killer. Growing up, Elizabeth had very strict parents. They were very religious, and a lot of the time with religion comes like very strict rules and things. So she grew up not really being allowed to do a lot of stuff, and she grew up with just like an abundance of rules, man. Her parents were really controlling to an extent where it was a little bit unhealthy, and that really sort of impacted her self-confidence and her self-esteem. And then when she went to school, she got bullied really badly. So that obviously didn't help her confidence or her self-esteem either. She really didn't have the easiest teen years, because from a young age she knew that she was bisexual, but because of her very religious, strict, controlling parents, that wasn't something that she could explore really. Like, it wasn't a healthy environment for her to sort of be herself, and that plus being bullied, it was a hard couple of years. When she started going to college, you'd think her parents would ease up a little bit, but they didn't. So she actually had a kind of hard college experience as well, because they just made it really difficult for her. There were times where she would go to church, but it would be like a gay-friendly church, or she'd go to an LGBT, like an event, like an LGBT-friendly event, like things like that. And her dad, he went to the church and pulled her out, like dragged her out in front of everybody, because it was so unacceptable for her to be at a church that was like gay friendly, which is fucking ridiculous. Elizabeth was even forced to spend some time at one of those little like anti-gay brainwashing church farm things where you send your kids off so that they come back and they're not gay anymore. She had to spend some time there because her parents were so against it. That also did absolutely nothing for her self-esteem and confidence and like self-worth. And she fucking hated herself because she was taught to hate herself. She was taught that it was it's not okay to be who you are. And she's like, well, I am who I am, so I hate it was fucked. When Elizabeth finished studying nursing, she went on to work in Woodstock in Ontario. She would work different nursing jobs, so like aged care and working with disabilities and that kind of stuff. And in 1997, Elizabeth went on to marry a guy called Donnie, which, no surprise, she ended up marrying a man because of how her formative years were spent. But when she did marry Donnie, she had a lot of problems. They had a lot of problems, and she went through a lot of mental battles, and she developed bipolar disorder. Her relationship with Donnie wasn't great. It was like more out of like, you're meant to get married, so this is what I'm gonna do. There wasn't like any passion, there wasn't any romance, like it was nothing like that. And shortly after marrying him, Elizabeth actually overdosed on pain medication. As far as we know, it wasn't intentional, it was accidental, but the meds were actually stolen from her work. She had stolen them and then overdosed. So she got caught big time, and they suspended for a brief amount of time her nursing license. So after all this drama and you know, almost dying and just being very upset and up and down and not happy where she was, she turned to strangers online for support, and particularly they were females. And Donnie eventually found these females, and he was just as religious as her parents and as what she was supposed to be, but she wasn't really. And so he thought, or at least he said he thought, that this was disgusting and despicable, and he divorced her over these girls on the internet. So that should give you some kind of context as to what they were doing on the internet. This actually worked out quite positively for Elizabeth though, because she then went on to meet, fall in love with, and get married to a woman named Sheila. This relationship went really well at first, particularly for Elizabeth, because this was her first time where she felt like she was living like a fully authentic life to her. Like this was her first time where she wasn't hiding the fact that she was like secretly gay or bi, or like there was not, like she was just fully open, like she was living her best life, you know what I mean? But this relationship would eventually turn very, very toxic, and they would have really bad arguments. Elizabeth would often act really, really childish, and she'd chuck like massive tantrums. She would have hissy fits, and she would just act out if things didn't go exactly her way. It was like, there was no give and take. It was like take and take and take and take, and then fucking lose my shit if I don't get what I want. She also refused to assist Sheila with caring for Sheila's older, sick mother who lived with them. So Elizabeth would literally get home from work where she takes care of elderly sick people and then say, no, I'm not helping you at fucking all with your sick mum who lives with us. But I love you, but I'm not helping. So now working at Crescent Care in mid-2007 is when Elizabeth would start to assault her patients. What she would do though, it wasn't an obvious attack. So she didn't abuse the elderly, like she wasn't physical with them, she didn't like verbally abuse them in any way. She did her job, like she took care of them in that way. If they needed something, like she'd do it. If they needed medication, she'd get it. Like she wasn't nasty to them in that way. But what she would do is she would inject them with insulin. Her first attack was against two elderly sisters, 87 and 88, and Elizabeth injected them with insulin while they were sleeping, but luckily she got her dosages mixed up so the patients didn't die, although they did both pass away a short time after, so it was sort of up in the air whether her like interference had anything to do with it to cause other things to happen, but yeah, that wasn't ruled a murder. This didn't deter Elizabeth from injecting people though. This just helped her learn from it and, you know, adjust her dosage. So her next victim was against James Silcox. He was a father of 6. He was a war veteran. He was 84 years old, and his kids trusted him at Crescent Care, trusted him in Elizabeth's care, and it's sad, you know? This time the insulin worked and it killed him. And Elizabeth actually went home after this, and she went back to Sheila and she told Sheila, like, this is what I did, and he died. And Sheila was just surprisingly very, very relaxed about it, didn't seem overly alarmed, didn't really have much of a reaction. And she was like, well, you should probably stop doing that because you'll get caught eventually. Like, that's all she said. She didn't like have any input. Like, what the fuck? It was just like weirdly blasé, and I don't know whether she got told the full story or whether she was confused or whether she thought it was like a nice euthanasia type of thing, but it wasn't, so I don't know. I'm just trying to make up excuses of like why you wouldn't have a reaction to that. Their whole relationship dynamic at the end of the day was very, very weird and toxic, and because of that they did eventually end up splitting up, but Sheila is the one who broke it off. Sheila broke up with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth didn't cope very well with the split. She didn't know how to deal with heartbreak at all. She didn't know how to deal with like the loss of control of Sheila. Like, she didn't have a choice. She just left, and there was nothing that Elizabeth could do. And because of her really intense emotions at this time, she actually attributes a fair chunk of the murders to like her and Sheila's breakup, because she feels like that is what fueled her to do it. So Elizabeth claims that she could hear voices that would tell her to kill the elderly patients. And she would hear these voices in her chest and in her stomach. So it was more of a feeling. She didn't like audibly hear it. She would feel it, but she would hear it. Like they were voices, but in her chest. If that makes sense, it probably doesn't at all. But she claims that these voices got louder and the urges were more intense after her breakup. And when she spoke to police, she appeared to be very candidly explaining everything that she had done and what had happened. And when she's talking about the voices, it genuinely, to me at least, looked like she believed it. Like it was fact to her. Like, yeah, I have a voice in my chest. Like I hear it, I feel it, I hear it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Between 2007 and 2014, Elizabeth continued to listen to that voice or that feeling. And she said that almost immediately after getting the feeling or the urge or hearing the voice, she would pretty much straight away go and grab the insulin. And she would do it quite obviously. It was sneaky, but it was like in plain sight. So she would go up and inject them while they're fully awake and while there are nurses around and whatever. And she would just say, oh, it's a vitamin. Like she'd do it in front of family and just say that it was vitamins. Like that's the level of trust that everybody had in her as a nurse, like to care for their fucking elderly, like fuck. And at her time working at Crescent Care, she would be responsible to up to 30 patients at a time. 30 patients in one shift, like that was her responsibility, those 30 people, which is like insane. It's scary to think about because she could have killed fucking all of them at any given time. Like it's nuts. She killed a further 6 patients in this time, in those years, and she attempted another 2 but failed. And these people were all aged between 79 to 90 years old. So it's really horrible, would have been horrible for their families, and dying from insulin isn't painless either. It can have quite bad like reactions. So just like she told Sheila the first time that she did it, she actually told a number of people about what she was doing. She told one guy that worked at Crescent Care. He worked in a different area and he was young. He was only like maybe early 20s. But like she told him, and he worked there and he didn't do anything. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't say anything. Why? She even told a lawyer, and the lawyer's advice was, yeah, maybe just like keep that one on the down low. Like maybe just like don't tell anyone, you'll be fine. Like, I mean, I guess as a lawyer, but like he didn't give a fuck. In Sheila's words, he told her to take it to the grave. Like fuck off, bro. And to be honest, the only reason that Elizabeth didn't kill more patients at Crescent Care wasn't because she just stopped. It wasn't even because she got caught. It's because she got fired for a long list of other dumb shit that she did that like she shouldn't have done. According to people at Crescent Care, she was actually quite a creep. She would be very flirtatious and sexual towards a lot of the younger nurses, the younger female nurses, which is, I guess, quite common with people who have to hide their sexuality all their fucking life, because then when it does come out, it fucking whew. And you know, she was known for stealing medications and whatever, so she got fired, and that is the only reason that she didn't kill anyone else at Crescent Care. They still didn't even know that she was killing people. That didn't even stop her though. She still killed other people. She killed one more person by injecting them with insulin while she was working part-time, but she actually injected 2 others, so that's 3 other people that would have been potentially dead. Like, because Crescent Care didn't even know. In 2016 though, she actually admitted herself into a mental health and rehab facility. And this was for a number of reasons. She did have a bit of an addiction to pain medication. I'm not entirely sure what she took it for. I think it might have been her back, but don't take my word for it. And obviously she had the mental health problems as well. And again, she confessed about all of her murders. For once, in this woman's life. Somebody actually did something about it. Thank God. One of the fucking nurses, or probably all of the nurses collectively, went and like contacted the appropriate authorities, because you can't just fucking kill people. From there, Elizabeth actually resigned as a nurse. She sent a letter to the registered nurse people and was like, I can't be one anymore because I broke the rules and I intentionally caused harm to the patients. Like, yeah, you killed them. Like, what do you mean? You killed them. So she basically confessed the whole thing to these, like, whoever's in charge of the nurses. I don't really know who that is or what that is, but she confessed to them, and then she went on to write a 4-page confession letter to the police as well. She was extremely forthcoming with police. She told them every single detail, exactly how she did it, exactly how she felt. She explained that she always felt remorseful. She always felt really shitty after she'd done what she'd done, but when she just got that feeling or that heard that voice, she couldn't resist the urge. That's kind of how she explained it. And she also explained what it sounded like. She said it was like a laugh from the pits of hell. She actually said it's like a laugh from the pits of heaven or hell. So I think that's interesting and shows her sort of perspective on heaven and hell, because she was very religious and like, yeah, anyway. And she actually told the police as well that she confessed to Sheila, she confessed to a priest and his wife, she confessed to that Crescent care worker, and she confessed to an ex-boyfriend, all of whom did absolutely nothing. And the reason she's like explained all this is that she said that she really tried to stop, she really didn't want to do it anymore, but she couldn't help herself, and she felt really bad after, felt really like shitty about herself and got really down. She had actually been seeing a psychologist this entire time as well, the same psychologist, and she was on medication for OCD, depression and antipsychotics, which obviously were not working. In 2017, Elizabeth was charged with 8 murders, 4 attempted murders, and 2 aggravated assaults. And later that year, she was found guilty and sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences with the chance of parole after 25 years. In 2018, she actually moved from the prison that she'd been in to an undisclosed location so that she could get treated properly for all the mental stuff. And at this point, she'd actually been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, which means she was sociopathic. This is a case of Elizabeth, this serial killer. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments. I want to know whether you believe her story about hearing the voices. Do you think she heard the voices in her chest and her stomach, or do you think that was kind of like an excuse or like a cover-up so she didn't feel so bad? And what do you think about all the people that she confessed this to? If some sweet old lady came up to you, she's not that old and she's not obviously not sweet, but if some lady came up to you and was like, hey, I kill some old people where I work, like, would you believe them? Would you contact someone? What would you think? I want to know. Let me know in the comments down below, or you can head over to my Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, which are all linked in the description, and let me know there, because I would love to hear your opinions on this one. And if you know how to pronounce her name, can you please teach me how to say it? Because I can say it in my head and then I say it out loud and I just go, oof, like, yikes. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you feel like it. I would really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so that you can see all my new videos. I post every single Thursday, all about true crime, and I would love to have you be a part of it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you guys are being safe out there. Don't take your kids to anti-gay farms, because that's fucked up. Don't trust nurses, and most importantly, never take your vitamins. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe. Bye. In 2016, though, she actually self-admitted herself. No shit. And this is a case of Elizabeth Wettlafer? I don't know. The granny killer.